The OS that embarrassed a government. Red Star OS 2.0. Red Star OS is North Korea's homegrown operating system, built to enforce complete digital control. Custom browser, custom text editor, custom everything, all heavily monitored. The OS even watermarks files internally so authorities can trace who shared what. It's like living in a house where the walls take notes and snitch on you. Despite this obsessive control, Red Star 2.0 became the punchline of an international cybersecurity conference when researchers hacked it so thoroughly they replaced its startup sound with Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up. Red Star OS got rickrolled. The hack spread globally within hours. Security conferences played it on loop. Tech blogs couldn't stop laughing. An operating system designed to maintain ideological purity became an international meme. For a regime where image is everything, this wasn't a security breach, it was a dignity breach. The government response was immediate and absolute. Red Star 2.0 was banned internally, erased from official use like a family embarrassment. They rebuilt from scratch, emerging with version 3.0, tighter kernel modifications, mandatory encryption, patched vulnerabilities, reduced attack surfaces. Red Star 3.0 became significantly harder to modify, not because they feared criminals, but because they feared humiliation. In environments where authority depends on perception, an OS that could be manipulated into meme territory became unacceptable. The irony? Red Star only became dangerous to its creators because the entire world laughed at it. An operating system died not from technical failure, but from wounded pride. The OS that deleted itself to avoid jail time. Whonix. Whonix is an operating system designed with one obsessive goal: complete network isolation. It splits everything into two virtual machines. One handles all your actual work, the other routes everything through Tor. Your computer literally doesn't know what you're doing online. It's like hiring a lawyer who refuses to meet you in person and only communicates through encrypted carrier pigeons. Privacy activists and journalists use Whonix because it makes surveillance nearly impossible, even if someone compromises your computer. But several governments flagged it as problematic the moment they realized users could operate entirely off-grid. In certain countries, simply downloading Whonix triggers automated monitoring, not because the software is illegal, but because invisibility itself is suspicious. One intelligence agency reportedly wrote an internal memo calling Whonix digitally untouchable, which sounds like a compliment until you realize they meant it as a threat assessment. The OS wasn't designed for criminals. It was designed to work so well that even legitimate users became impossible to trace. The irony? Whonix only became dangerous because governments couldn't crack it. An operating system that protects everyone equally becomes the enemy when authorities prefer selective access. The OS that looked like Mac OS and paid the price. Pearpc plus OS x86 distros. In the mid-2000s, a group of developers tried to run Mac OS on non-Apple hardware. Not a knockoff. The actual operating system just freed from Apple's expensive metal cage. So the community called it Hackintosh, which should have been a warning sign that lawyers were coming, bypassing Apple's hardware requirements entirely. Enthusiasts loved it. Apple's legal department did not. Several countries saw retailers quietly pulled from shelves after cease and desist letters arrived. Forums hosting installation guides were hit with takedown notices. In some regions, distributing these builds became legally questionable even if you owned a legitimate Mac OS license. The technical side was a disaster too. Bluetooth rarely worked. Audio drivers caused kernel panics. One user claimed their Hackintosh crashed so often it felt like the computer was actively trying to escape back to Apple. Corporate IT departments banned these builds immediately, not because of piracy concerns, but because supporting them was impossible. The OS wasn't banned for being broken. It was banned because fixing it required a law degree and a degree in electrical engineering simultaneously. The OS that became a propaganda weapon. Kylin OS, early Chinese government builds. Kylin OS was China's attempt at building a completely independent operating system for government and military use. No foreign code, no backdoors. Total digital sovereignty. In theory, it was the perfect solution for a nation concerned about espionage. In practice, Early builds of Kylin were so aggressive in their monitoring that even government employees started complaining. The OS tracked every keystroke, logged every file transfer, and reported unusual activity automatically. One leaked memo described it as working inside a glass office where the walls take notes. When researchers discovered that some Kylin builds were actually modified versions of Ubuntu with surveillance tools bolted on, international sanctions discussions began. Several allied nations banned Kylin from any system connected to shared infrastructure, fearing data collection at the OS level. The strange part? Kylin was banned abroad not because it was insecure, but because it was too secure for the wrong reasons. Later versions of Kylin improved dramatically, but the early reputation stuck. Sometimes an OS isn't banned for what it does, it's banned for what it symbolizes. The OS banned for being too honest about piracy. Lindows, later Linspire. Lindows launched with one mission: make Linux so easy that even your technologically confused uncle could use it. And it worked. Sort of. The problem wasn't the Linux part. It was the name, and the marketing, and the fact that the CEO kept implying you could run Windows software without paying Microsoft. Microsoft's legal team moved faster than the OS ever did. Lawsuits flooded in from multiple countries. Courts in the Netherlands, Sweden, and Belgium sided with Microsoft, banning the Lindows trademark entirely. Retailers were ordered to pull it from shelves. The developer had to rebrand to Linspire, which sounds like a dental procedure, but here's the kicker. Lindows wasn't even that good at running Windows apps. The compatibility layer crashed constantly. One reviewer said using Lindows felt like asking a vegan to cook a steak. They'll try, but it's not going to taste right. The OS was banned not because it threatened Microsoft technologically, but because it threatened them legally. In the end, Lindows didn't fail because of code. It failed because someone chose a name that basically dared a trillion-dollar company to sue them. And they did. The OS that accidentally became a botnet. Certain custom router firmware, DD-WRT black hats. DD-WRT is legitimate open-source router firmware used by millions, but because it's open source, anyone can modify it. And some people did, badly. Custom DD-WRT builds started appearing on cheap routers sold online, preloaded with botnet code, crypto miners, and remote access tools. Users thought they were getting advanced router features. What they actually got was a device that joined a global hacking network the moment it powered on. Security researchers discovered routers quietly participating in DDoS attacks, mining cryptocurrency, and relaying spam. One compromised router farm in Southeast Asia was generating more malicious traffic than some small countries. ISPs started blocking devices running unverified DD-WRT builds. Some countries required certification before any custom firmware could be sold. Google and major ISPs began blacklisting routers with modified firmware. In some regions, laws were passed requiring all networking equipment to run auditable, vendor-approved software only. The cruel irony? DD-WRT itself is secure and powerful, but an OS designed to give users control became dangerous the moment manufacturers decided control meant control over unsuspecting customers. It wasn't banned for being open source. It was banned because freedom without oversight turned living rooms into hacking infrastructure. The OS banned for philosophical reasons. FreeDOS in certain government contracts. FreeDOS is a free open-source version of MS-DOS. It's lightweight, stable, and still used for legacy hardware, embedded systems, and retro computing. It's also completely harmless, which is exactly why some governments banned it. In the early 2010s, several countries issued procurement rules requiring all government computers to run modern, supported operating systems with active security updates. FreeDOS, being a DOS system, didn't qualify. Even though it worked perfectly for specific use cases like BIOS updates and industrial equipment, it was blacklisted on principle. IT departments protested. We only use FreeDOS to flash firmware. Didn't matter. Policy said modern OS only. One agency reportedly spent thousands migrating FreeDOS-based kiosks to Windows Embedded, which then required more maintenance than FreeDOS ever did. The ban wasn't technical, it was philosophical. To bureaucrats, DOS meant outdated, even when the system worked flawlessly. FreeDOS became a casualty of checkbox compliance. In the end, FreeDOS was banned not because it was insecure, but because it was old-fashioned. Sometimes an OS is banned simply because it doesn't fit the narrative of progress, even when progress makes things worse. The OS that crashed a stock exchange unnamed RTOS custom build. Real-time operating systems, RTOS, are designed for precision. They run medical devices, industrial robots, and trading systems where milliseconds matter. But one unnamed custom RTOS build, deployed at a European stock exchange, had a fatal flaw. It rounded timestamps inconsistently. For months, the system worked fine. Then one day during high-frequency trading, the rounding error caused orders to execute in the wrong sequence. Trades that should have happened in microseconds started piling up. The exchange froze. Billions in transactions halted. Investigators discovered the RTOS had been modified by a contractor who thought optimizing the kernel meant removing error-checking code. The exchange banned the custom RTOS immediately. The contractor's company folded within months. The OS wasn't malicious, it was just confident. And in systems where confidence without precision costs billions, that's enough to get banned worldwide. The OS that was too private for governments. Tails OS. Tails OS is one of the few operating systems built with a single purpose: erase everything. No logs, no history, no digital footsteps. Once your session ends, Tails forgets you existed. It's basically an extremely secure goldfish. Journalists, whistleblowers, privacy advocates, and ordinary users rely on it because it pipes all network traffic through Tor and stores nothing on your device unless you specifically ask it to. Everything runs from a USB stick. Unplug it, and your entire computing session vanishes into the digital void like it never happened. But this level of privacy becomes a problem the moment a government prefers surveillance over security. Several countries move to restrict or ban the use of Tails because it makes user activity completely untraceable. It wasn't that the OS was dangerous, it was that its invisibility made monitoring impossible. An untraceable computer is basically a ghost with Wi-Fi. Some national agencies even issued internal briefs warning about Tails. Not because criminals were using it more than anyone else, but because officials realized they couldn't gather intelligence from a system designed to wipe its memory clean every single time it powers off. One intelligence memo allegedly called it digitally untouchable, which sounds like a compliment until you realize they meant it as a threat. The irony is that Tails only became dangerous to governments because it worked exactly as intended. An operating system that protects everyone equally becomes the enemy when authorities prefer selective access. Tails didn't get banned for wrongdoing, it got banned for being too good at privacy. The OS that looked too much like Windows. ReactOS. ReactOS is an open-source attempt to rebuild Windows from scratch, not copy it, not clone it, but recreate its behavior using entirely original code. It's one of the most ambitious projects in operating system history, like trying to reverse engineer a jet airplane by staring at it through a window. The goal was noble. No Microsoft hacks, no activation keys, just pure Windows functionality built from the ground up by volunteers who apparently enjoyed digital masochism. But because ReactOS mimicked Windows so closely, several institutions quietly banned or blacklisted it due to legal uncertainty. If Microsoft ever decided ReactOS crossed the line into infringement, anyone using it, especially government offices, could be caught in a lawsuit crossfire, and nobody wants to explain to their boss why the entire IT department is being deposed. Early builds were incredibly unstable. Icons vanished, drivers crashed, menus froze mid-click. One user joked that ReactOS crashed before the desktop finished loading, which didn't inspire confidence for large-scale deployment. Not because ReactOS was malicious, but because its legal ambiguity and technical fragility made it too risky for official adoption. The combination of might get sued and definitely will crash is not a compelling value proposition for enterprise IT. The OS wasn't banned for wrongdoing, it was banned to avoid the possibility of future drama. ReactOS became a victim of both its ambition and Microsoft's lawyers existing in the same universe.